Welcome to the Classic Faserip podcast. We're back with another episode. I'm Vince. I'm sitting with Keith. How are you doing this week, Keith?
I am doing just fine, Vince. Thank you for asking.
Excellent. So we're back for another episode. We came back last week with a nice bang with a bunch of news, and we had announced a bunch of things. We had some projects we went over. So we have a correction to the news because obviously, the MCU and Spider-Man things have changed as we saw. And the biggest headlines that we're seeing now is that good old Spidey will be staying in the MCU for at least one more cinematic release for himself, and I guess one appearance in another movie coming up.
So I think that someone heard our podcast, got scared of the idea that they had to rewrite the entire movie and couldn't reference anything, and the brakes were pumped. The news that's coming out is that Tom Holland was essential to them coming back to the table and doing all of this. So, Tom, if you're listening, good work, buddy.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's not listening, but if he is,
look, all three of our listeners, I'm sure somebody put him to the wise.
Yes, so the new Spider-Man film featuring Tom Holland is scheduled to be released on July 16th, 2021. I'm sure that's not a hard date. It might be a soft date, but who knows? I'm just looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with number 3.
I'm thinking emo dancing and, maybe a Tobey Maguire appearance.
You think there's going to be a hat tip to a Toby dance in there?
All I know is that they've done it. They've referenced it twice now. Once in the actual movie, once in Into the Spider-Verse. They got to go for the trifecta. This, or I'm thinking Venom 2.
I'm interested to see them bring that whole cinematic, the Spider-Verse into one thing. I want to see what they're going to do with Venom and supposedly with Carnage coming up as well, and I'm interested in seeing that.
If they keep Woody Harrelson to play Carnage, that I think would be, I was never a huge Woody Harrelson fan until Zombieland. And after Zombieland, I was like, Woody's got game. Let's see what he can do. And he's slowly begun to grow on me. And if they can keep him at the Zombieland level of attendance, I'm there with him.
He did a pretty good job in Hunger Games too. I mean, I thought he was fabulous in those movies.
Yeah. Like I said, he's slowly begun to grow on me as an actor.
You weren't a big fan of him in the 90s with all his movies and everything, and
no. I really have never been a Woody Harrelson fan, and it wasn't until Zombieland about 10 years ago. Really, I mean, in all honesty, I've never been a big Woody Harrelson fan, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know why. I just never. He was not my cup of tea.
So you weren't a fan of his on Cheers, obviously.
No.
Oh boy. So there was some minor changes to our site. We did get a phone number for voicemail, as we had promoted out last week on our webpage, which you can head over to facebook.com/classicfacerip. That's our webpage, basically. We do have classicfacerip.com, but that's just to post the shows up. Call now. 469-431-0277 is the voicemail number. It's basically Google Voice. I didn't even know I had that number, to be honest, and I saw an email trigger off for it the other day. I'm like, I have a voicemail number for Google? So I checked it, and it was like, yeah, thank you for calling Ball Games Productions. I was like, oh. And I looked at it as I picked it up in like 2010. And it's just been, I guess, been sitting there since 2010.
Call now.
Are you trying to do subliminal messages to our listeners?
It's not subliminal if they see me doing it.
Or, yeah, true. But yeah, that'll give you a voicemail option to speak your mind. And obviously, if it's within acceptable range. We'll give it a play on here for y'all to hear, and hopefully you'll, give us a question, a comment. Obviously, saying things like "you guys suck" does not qualify as being played on the air.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't, as long as you're explaining why we suck and it's succinct and to the point, I don't, I can take criticism. Profane language
No.
is not going to work. I mean, obviously we're not going to play that. I'm not going to have somebody using language that you couldn't use in a polite conversation.
No,
And it's nothing personal. I mean, I can be just as profane as the next person, but I don't do it on here.
mind your P's and Q's.
That's it. That's it.
It's funny. With one of my other shows in the past, we had a voicemail, and someone called in and they left a 15-minute voicemail.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the girl basically just did her entire own segment without even realizing she did a segment for the show. I was just like, you know what? Hey, this is now a segment. And I added it into the show.
Well, that's cool.
She had some good points, and it was interesting. It was just funny. That was like, I looked at it and I'm like, wow, 15 minutes? What did she say?
Stephen Watson, call now.
Yeah.
Where is Stephen Watson when we need him? I'm surprised he didn't call.
He said he was going to call, but he obviously got busy. But he said he has a face for radio and a voice for not radio. So I'm like, okay.
Stephen Watson, you have failed this podcast.
Are we legally allowed to use that with a Marvel podcast? Isn't that
sure? Why not?
More DC related? I mean,
hey, if Marvel can do the "that's all, folks" with the Spider Ham at the end of the Spider-Verse, we can use "you have failed this podcast."
Yeah, I guess that. Well, Looney Tunes is. Who's
Warner Brothers?
Yeah, that's true. That is Warner Brothers. That's DC. I'm surprised they got away with using that.
It's parody.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's the only way they would be able to do it.
Oh, whatever.
They were parodying Porky Pig.
Piggy Pork, you were going to say?
Yeah, him too.
He's the Marvel equivalent, right?
Yeah, why not?
I did see in news, speaking about WB and Hanna-Barbera and things like that, there's going to be a Scooby cinematic universe very shortly.
There sort of already is. I mean, if you watch the last Scooby-Doo series they did, and I'm trying to think of when this... They did one where there was a reference to Blue Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a whole thing about the Blue Falcon and Dynamite and being in the Scooby-Doo universe, and Johnny Quest being in the Scooby-Doo universe as well. And that's sort of where Blue Falcon came out of. And I mean, it was crazy. It was one of those things where I was watching it going, did they just reference Johnny Quest? Was that what that was? And then they referenced, I think Blue Falcon's real name is Randall Crown or something like that, and they referenced him being an investor of Quest Industries. And I'm like, really? Okay, and they did a more serious Scooby-Doo version of Blue Falcon.
I've never seen Blue Falcon really taken seriously, but...
that was the part that blew my mind too, because I was like, you just sort of, it is like, I wouldn't say it's the Dark Knight version, but it was almost like that level of seriousness. They were taking Blue Falcon serious as a superhero, and I'm like, how the heck do you do that? That's I thought it was pretty entertaining, but it was one of those things where it just happened to be a really weird sort of stretch on the character, and I was like, wow, okay. So,
well, I saw they have a full Blue Falcon comic book out with Dynamite, and they also have a Rocky and Bullwinkle comic book out now too as well. When I was at the
Rocky and Bullwinkle are the bomb.
Yeah, it's kind of the artwork is kind of looks like the original drawings, but if you look at it, you're like, hey, this looks wait, no, it's it's confusing. You think it's the original artwork, but it's not because it's off a little bit. Obviously, it's not the same person drawing it from 50 years ago.
You know who needs to draw it, and I'm telling you, this would be the biggest thing since sliced toast is Alex Ross.
Really?
I mean, come on, Alex Ross draws Rocky and Bullwinkle. That would be the greatest thing ever. People would lose their mind. How do you do a photorealistic Rocky and Bullwinkle with Alex Ross? That would be, that'd be some stuff right there.
Do we need another live action movie?
Well, no. We've had like 2 or 3, and it's just time to stop.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. As much as I liked them, it just, I think it's sort of like the Peabody and Sherman movie.
Oh boy,
It was cute, but at our age group, the audience gets it.
Yeah.
At my grandkids' age group, they don't understand what this is. They're looking at it going, why is the moose and squirrel talking? I don't understand,
Because it's moose
you
and
have
squirrel.
to explain. It's a cartoon from when I was little. Oh.
Yeah. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. That's old, Paul. Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Old.
Kids are truthful.
It's hurtful. That's what it is. It is what it is. They're not trying to be. I know that, but I mean, it's one of those. You're hurting my soul. You're hurting my soul. So.
So what's going on in the community? Pretty much, as far as I know, the magazine idea or the monthly magazine idea was tossed around last month. Was there any more progress on that? I know some people were interested in hearing more about that.
I have not heard anything else about it. The Realms of the Occult is nearing completion. Lunatic Fringe, which is all of the advertising auxiliary characters who were created for bits of Marvel advertising and or Marvel promotions, such as like the Hostess characters or Obnoxious the Clown from Crazy Magazine, Teen Hulk, all of those characters. It's a supplement coming out called Lunatic Fringe, which specializes in all of that and is huge. We're going to build a wall around it. It's huge. The other thing that's come out that we actually missed last week, and kicking myself over this one because it's mine, is the Moon Knight source book. Which, if you have not read it, Moon Knight is so much more than the Marvel Batman, which everybody immediately goes, oh, he's Marvel Batman. No, he's not Marvel Batman. He's much better than Marvel Batman. He's, a lot better than Marvel Batman. So it's one of those things where you have to sit down and look through it, and it is a fantastic book. The only issue is the with it being the comparison always being made. I tell people, I said, the issue with Marvel Batman as a comparison is that Batman leaves everybody tied up in a nice little neat package at Commissioner Gordon's doorstep. And Moon Knight would have put the Joker in a pine box after the second appearance. There wouldn't have been a Joker for Moon Knight. Oh, I feel we're there together. It's just one good push. Well, here, let me give you one. No.
Kind of sounded like Paul Bearer from the WWF back in the day.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Oh,
So,
yes.
oh.
Okay.
But no, the Moon Knight source book came out. Me and Steve Jolly worked on that for a long time. Well, I say a long time. Truth of the matter is that it took us probably 2.5 months to get it taken care of. I got it all hammered out, and the longest part I think was layout, if it was anything, because it looks fantastic. Steve Jolly always does an excellent job on that stuff. He really needs some help. If anybody knows anything about layout for PDFs, please contact Steve Jolly in the Unofficial Canon Group. He will gladly take your assistance. I can sort of do some stuff, but in comparison, I'm like a 7-year-old trying to drive a tractor trailer, and he's more like, Mario Andretti. So,
Uh, it's a weird comparison there, but okay, got it. I mean, my experience mostly is a Microsoft publisher. That's about it.
yeah. I mean, we're all a bunch of self-taught people anyway. So the fact that he makes it look as good as he does, I bow to his superior wisdom.
Now you're inflating his ego right now as he's listening.
Well, call in
Stephen Watson. No. And Party Man Tom needs to call in too. So.
Yeah, where is Tom Roark in the house?
Alrighty. So anyway, this week we were going to talk a little bit about some rules. We're going to talk a little bit about house rules. Keith actually had suggested we talk a little about his house rules for multi-attack as opposed to what's in the book. Go ahead and present your case for multi-attack.
Well, mine is more multi-actions as opposed to multi-attack.
Okay.
The way the rule is set up is you can do multiple attacks using fighting feats at remarkable or amazing. Or, alternately, you can attack an entire area at -4 CS to attack. I always thought that was fine, but the issue becomes if you have, let's assume that you have 3 actions, or you're capable of getting 3 actions and you get them. Do you have to attack all 3 times? Could you attack, dodge, and say attack again? Could you help program the computer, defuse a bomb, and fly a plane for your 3 actions? Assuming all were within physical capability. So my thought always was that rather than making it 3 attacks, make it 3 actions, and it just or multi actions as opposed to multi attacks. And what I did, at least in my game, is to allow that to happen. Now, the basically the way the ground rule works is you have to have the ability score appropriate to being able to pull off that number of actions.
Right.
Whether it was remarkable for 2 or amazing for 3. And I know somebody's going to inevitably ask the question, well, what about like super speedsters? I factor that in unless you're doing power stunts where you have gone beyond the initial 2 or 3. Use the power rank for the ability feat in question.
Okay.
If you have amazing speed or better, you can try for 3 actions. If you have remarkable or incredible, you can try for 2. But the way it works is this: if you have, let's say, amazing fighting,
okay,
or amazing agility, you can do multiple actions
by default,
assuming you make the feat.
Oh, make the feat. Okay.
Either for fighting or for shooting. If it were, let's say, psychic attacks, it would go off of psyche, and it's the same scenario. If it's movement, it's based off of the movement power. So if you have hyper speed
Okay.
and want to attack 3 times, you could do it, or want to dodge 3 times, or want to evade 3 times. Because, at least in my game, evasion is not an all encompassing thing. Dodging is not an all encompassing thing in the game. All it does is reduce your chances of getting hit.
Right.
Uh, Now, I do use auto feats, which I don't know if a lot of people do that, but the game says that anything minus 3 CS from the attribute is an auto feat. So, for instance, um, you have to have unearthly agility to catch a bullet, but at amazing, you can automatically dodge an arrow.
Hmm.
Uh, so, assuming that your super speedster has unearthly agility, you would need a green feat to catch that arrow or catch multiple arrows, dodge those arrows, deflect those arrows. At a certain feat, whether it was speed or whatever, you would have to, you wouldn't have to make those feats anymore. So I incorporate a lot of, at least for my own game, auto feats. I don't want to have to sit there and get bogged down in rolls. Uh, if your character, if we can do the auto feats, we do it. Obviously, if you have something, a fighting or agility that is so far above the required rank, I don't even make you roll for it.
Right. Yeah.
You can get the 3 attacks, but no, there's so few characters in my games that have even close to that. It's not even an issue. But allowing multiple actions, I find, um, allows you to get more accomplished, or at least give the appearance of getting more accomplished, and making it a little more cinematic than your standard Vincent attacks, I attack, Vincent dodges, I dodge once around. You know what I mean? As
Right.
opposed to Vincent dives through the window, uh, hits Turk, Barrett, and Ace on the way through, and then dodges towards the door as they open fire on him. That's a little more cinematic and a little more Marvel to me than you crash through the window and punch Turk. Okay, then Ace gets to open up on you, and next round, you get to, like, either dodge or attack, and then you know what I mean. It's a little more cinematic. It allows you a little more leeway as opposed to just attacking multiple times or dodging once.
Hmm. So for each one of the like FASE RIP, whatever, FASE, you have a minimum threshold for them to have. So, like you said, amazing on fighting, for example, if they want to have
Yeah.
multiple attacks of punching somebody across the room,
Mm-hmm.
or I should say multiple actions of doing that, they could. Do they have to roll, or if they have 50, they automatically
Yes.
get? Okay, so they have to roll.
Well, now here's the thing. If let's assume that the fighting is Shift X, which would be what you would have to have in order to get 3 ranks above amazing.
Okay.
Let's assume that Vincent has Shift X fighting. He automatically gets 3 attacks around, or 3 actions around, if he's doing Slugfest. Uh, Now, obviously, if you're dodging, if you're, what I allowed in that case is, if you can take multiple actions, if you're allowed to take multiple actions, and let's say that you want to hit 2 people and then try to make a dodge,
Right.
I'll let that happen. Sure, I don't have a problem in the world with that. Or you want to evade, and a lot of people get confused with. At least I don't know if your players do, but my players do. I want to dodge. when they're like hand to hand with somebody. It's not dodging at that point, it's evading. Well, what's the difference? Well, evade is hand to hand, dodge is anything ranged.
I
Well,
just
the
think
guy's using a pistol. Yeah, but he's like standing 2 feet from you. So it's still, you know, a dodge roll.
we just
So,
incorporate it all into one. Just
yeah,
dodge.
I just incorporate it all in one as best I can.
Mm,
Uh, Now, I've allowed people to make like multiple movements.
right.
So, let's say you accelerate to amazing speed and, you're really trying to get across town to save little Timmy who is locked in a safe and been thrown out a window.
In a well.
How are we? Yeah, in a well. The dog is barking. Whatever you want to phrase it. If you've got to be somewhere really expeditiously, what you can do is with your multiple actions, take 3 movements at the same time. So rather than moving, let's say, 8 areas around, you take 3 movements and you're moving 24 areas in that round. Now you're making endurance feats afterwards because that's an exhausting thing. Now, what I do use is auto feats for movement as
Okay.
well. So if you're moving at 3 ranks less than max speed, you're not having to make endurance feats because you're at more of a cruising speed as opposed to all out, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, you're not pushing it to the limits while you're trying to get to the place you're going to, so you're kind of okay with the endurance. I get it.
Yeah, yeah. I do that with all of the, movement stuff, and I find it works easier. Yeah, your character has monstrous hyper speed or monstrous hyper running lightning speed, whatever it is, but at the same time, you're not moving all out. um, One of the other things that I do, and this is just me, this is another house rule that we have, to differentiate between hyper running and hyper speed
Okay.
and lightning speed. Lightning speed and hyper running are all land based.
Right, right.
Lightning speed allows you to accelerate to full speed in one round and stop within one area, which I always liked that. Hyper running accelerates so much, it's more the real world version of what hyper running would be, as opposed to lightning speed. Hyper speed allows you to move everything at tower rank times normal speed. So if you have amazing speed, you're moving 50 times faster than normal. Okay, that's sort of really confusing. And the way that we handled that in my game is rather than try to do the math on that,
Yeah, really.
so I move 3 areas around. I now move 50 rounds or 50 times faster. So I'm moving 150 areas around. No, we're not going to do that. So what I did there was hyperspeed uses the air movement chart as opposed to land movement.
Okay.
So so that's where you get into your flash level characters, if you will. Um, you go from being able to run, say, excellent of 90 miles an hour to excellent of like 325 miles an hour or 225 or whatever it is on an air chart. Uh, it's a quantum leap in the amount of speed that you have. Could you take hyperspeed like twice and move to the space chart? I don't allow it, but if that's what someone else wants to do, be my guest.
Yeah,
Just
those.
like,
Oh, go ahead.
you know, and there are some funky. They wrote the rules in some funky ways. I always thought healing and regeneration was done real strange in the game because the way regeneration is supposed to work, at least in the advanced set, you heal number of health points per turn. So if you have incredible health, or if you have incredible regeneration, you're healing 40 points every turn.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
10 rounds in a turn. So essentially, you're at rest, you're healing 4 points a round. And people were complaining when I was, I do write ups and write it as per the rules. And they would complain about it. It's like, well, that's how it's written. I mean, I didn't make that up. Take it up with, the writer of the game. So for a long time, what we did in my game was you healed an endurance rank once per day. So if you had incredible endurance, you healed 40 points per day from complete bed rest. Day being, of course, 24 hours, not 12 hours, not 8 hours, not whatever. Complete 24 hours. Um, Regeneration healed by the hour. And you could take regeneration twice, at least in my game, and go from hour to round so that you're healing 40 points a round, or 40 points a turn, rather, the way it's supposed to be presented. And that I think mimics more of what Wolverine and Deadpool are capable of, as opposed to, your character who heals fast. I mean, everybody, if you look at the comic books, Spider-Man has always healed fast. You know what I mean? The Hulk has always healed fast. Uh, so it's just a matter of getting that taken care of and, you know, doing whatever it is you need to do with it.
I've always ruled with healing and regeneration that when you're during battle, you really don't generate health unless something like a magical spell or something. And then once you're out of battle and able to rest, you would pretty much gain everything back that you lost because you're superheroes. That's the type of game we're running as a superhero, comic book world type thing. So not
Yeah,
really concerned about, oh, you get 4 hit points back per round or like the rules say.
that's right. That's right. I mean, I don't want to do bookkeeping, and I don't want the players to have to do bookkeeping either, because at the end of the day, that's not fun.
Nope.
You
Not
know,
fun for you as a GM either.
It's like the encumbrance rules for AD&D. Everybody, you're only a stickler for that when you're GM, and you have to look at it and go, no, you can't carry 12 Vorpal swords and 16 Warhammers and 12 suits of armor and blah, 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 blah at the same time. But nobody wants to sit and do the bookkeeping on that.
No, I handle it
I don't
logically.
I don't want to know how much your spell components weigh.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
I handle it very logically when I play first edition D&D, and it's just you can do whatever you have on you. When it comes to the point like you find 50,000 gold pieces, and players like, I take it. Really, you're gonna carry 50,000 gold pieces? You know how much one gold piece weighs? They're like, no. And then when I tell them, they're like, oh, I take 100 gold pieces. Okay, that's more sensible. Or when
Yeah.
I had a player that would, way back in the 90s, this was in Connecticut, we had Bob's Discount Furniture when I lived in Connecticut. It was a big chain of stores that was discount furniture. The guy would repurpose furniture and sell it, make it brand new, whatever. So I had a character named Bob, original, right?
Yeah, hey.
And every time he went into dungeons, he would steal the furniture and put it in the cart. And he was like, at one point, I wasn't really paying attention, and I found out he had like 4 couches and tables in his backpack. I'm like, how is this in his? No.
No.
That's when I stepped in. Like, logically, you're not carrying that. Like, you want to carry a chair or two, fine, but you're going to be walking around with a chair or two over your shoulder and not able to fight.
Well, that's it. That's it. Yeah. Or start using the chair as the weapon, improvised weapon.
And then it's the whole, well, I put it in my bag of holding. That's not going to fit in the bag of holding, unfortunately.
No,
There's
it
only
doesn't quite
so
work like
much
that. You got to
space
be
like
able to
that.
actually physically get it into the bag. And I tell you what, in that case, what we would do is get you one of those 30-pound trash bags, and if you can fit it in the 30-pound trash bag without ripping the trash bag in half, I'll let it happen. But until then, no.
I called the player on a bluff similar to that. It was we were playing a Marvel game, and the guy wanted to open a trap door and roll forward. Oh, this is all in one movement. He wanted to climb up, open the trap door, roll forward into the roll, stand up, and then stab him with his two weapons like this. So I can't see the camera.
Okay.
So I'm like, I don't think that's possible to do that by climbing up and rolling forward enough with momentum. And he's like, I'll prove it to you. I'm like, all right. So we went in the living room of my friend's house, and we set up this little thing with couch pillows and everything to represent the trapdoor, and him like climbing up on like a foot table thing, like a stool or something, and then
Uh-huh.
rolling forward. And he was able. I said, if you could actually do it in real life, I will give it to you with an automatic hit for your character. So he demonstrated it, rolled through, and stood up with the stab perfectly. And I was just like, all right, you got it. I'm not going to say
That's
no
it.
at that point. I mean, if a player's going to go through all that and come up with something that inventive, why would I stifle that? I mean, it's funny.
Well, and I mean, there's something to be said about fudging. Let's be honest here. Everybody wants it to be fun, and
Yeah, of
everybody
course.
wants to have a good time with the game, but you don't want to be a butthead about it, man. You don't want to, oh, well, you can't do that. Well, if it's within the realm of possibility, I'll let you try it. I mean, if it's not something that I can get away with for an auto feat, or it's not something that ordinarily you would be able to do, I might question it. But
Yeah.
can your character, I don't know, uh, do whatever? It's a possibility it might not happen, but it's a work in progress. You gotta play to it, and there's something to be said about letting the players have their day. They're the heroes. You can't have the heroes of your game be saved by the X-Men every other week. That's not fun for them. It's like running the Star Wars role-playing game. People who play it enjoy Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it's nice to, every once in a while Luke Skywalker or Lando Calrissian or whoever shows up, but at the same time, they're not the heroes of the game. You're the heroes of the game.
Right.
So, make it about the players, and every once in a while, you got to let the players win. Got to give the players something to keep them coming back. And then when it's time to yank the rug out from underneath them and watch them fall down the stairs, you got to do that too.
I think the best bet to handle those situations is give them a suggestion, and generally they'll take it. So instead of saying no, you can't do that, well, you could say, well, maybe if you try doing this instead, it might work better, and we'll roll for that. And generally, 95% of the time when I've done that in any game, players go, okay, the DM or GM is suggesting it, so that means it's a good chance it's probably going to happen, so they take it. At least that's how
Yeah,
I see it.
yeah. That is, yeah. I run a Doctor Who game on Friday nights, and we had a player who suggested uh, going back across his own timeline to do something, and I said something about that's like breaking the laws of time. You don't want to do that, and they're like, "Oh, is that the NPC telling us?" I said, "No, that's the GM telling you
Yeah, that's the
that if you
god of the
do
game.
yeah, you could be really really bad. It's a bad experience when it goes wrong." Oh, okay, well, so it does happen. We get people who, then you get people who try to do crazy stuff and they lose a character over it. And that's another whole topic that we could do. People losing characters. Oh my God. Have you ever had anybody react badly to that?
No, honestly. I mean, one guy got a little sad, but you know, trying to think. I mean, even back in the '80s, I played so many different characters myself. When one died, I'd be like, oh, pull out the character sheet, start all over again. Well, you've had some bad experiences with that?
I had a player. Have you ever played the Super Module Temple of Elemental Evil for AD&D?
Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
Okay. The Mode House.
Uh huh.
There's a spider in the Mode House that it's poison, save, or die.
Yeah.
And I had a player who went through 40 minutes of character generation. We get into the game. We're like 20 minutes into the game. They get to the moat house. They're traipsing around the moat house trying to find treasure. She stuck her hand in there, got bit by the spider, failed the saving throw, and was dead.
Kerplunk.
And I mean, dead. And you want to talk about being mad? Oh, got livid. Got livid with me. That's the stupidest thing you've ever done. I said, listen. I said, it's a saving throw. It happens. I said, if you want, change the name on your character sheet and you just bring another character in. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play this stupid game where, and then, of course, now she loves like 5th edition where and the people who are like, Thaco is confusing.
It's not.
It's not. It's, if you grew up with it, it's definitely not confusing. And I love when people try to explain it with geometry. It's like, it's not geometry. I don't understand what's so difficult about this. So, but again, we go back to people who look at the rules and they trip up over something and are like, I don't like that. For years, regeneration was confusing to me, but it was only because I didn't sit down and really read it. My ADHD addled mind as a teenager was like, I, no,
I'll just wing it.
Yeah, I'll just wing it,
Yeah.
And now I'm reading it going, that's really simple, but I don't know that I would, regeneration is like really, really powerful in this game. You got to be careful about it. I wouldn't give you regeneration more than, say, above good or excellent. It's, especially if you've got more than, say, 60 health.
So let's backtrack here one moment because I had a question before that I forgot while you were talking, and I was just like, I remembered it now. So back to your multi-action house rule. Now, you said there's a threshold, obviously, that you had established for whatever the abilities. Based on that, you get multi-action. Excuse me. What if someone is below that threshold and is like, well, I want to try multiple actions? Do you allow them a roll, say like a yellow or a red, or you just be like, nope, sorry, sucker?
It is, I predicated on the attribute. If they don't, let's say they have good fighting.
Okay.
Let's say they have, Hawkeye traditionally has good fighting.
Okay.
Now he has the agility to do multiple arrow attacks and is infamous for being able to fire a volley of arrows like that Swedish guy that can fire like 20 in a 10-second round or whatever. But let's say that Hawkeye's doing hand-to-hand combat with somebody, he's getting one attack around. Unless he's using the bit from the player's handbook that says you can attack an entire area of people, and it's an area adjacent to you. So basically, let's say, if I've read it correctly and I'm remembering it correctly, the way it would work would be something like this: Hawkeye walks into the bar. Sees Bullseye at the bar and immediately attacks Bullseye and his friends.
Okay.
Flips over a table, throws a chair, whatever. Immediately launches into an attack on the adjacent area. So you're having to come into a situation where you can do that, and you can do it with Slugfest or Energy or I'm trying to remember, Slugfest, Blunt, Energy, all the things that would allow you to throw a weapon and hit multiple times, or bounce your shield off of 4 targets and make it return to you. Use your billy club to knock out 3 people and return it to you. That sort of thing.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, where the attribute is concerned, if you don't have the attribute to do multiple attacks, I just don't really even allow it. But that's why I do, like, instead of psychic attacks going off of fighting or agility, I do it off of psyche. So if you have the psyche to back that, you can do the multiple actions. If
Mhm.
you have the agility to fire multiple rounds or multiple arrows or throw multiple spears, I'll allow it to happen. I mean, really, if you're doing the game the way it's intended to be done, and you look at the rules for shooting attacks, at least the way that guns are presented in the rule system, rate of fire is 1
Yeah.
unless it says otherwise. So that means you, even if you were to have multiple actions as it's written, you would only be able to fire that pistol once a round. And I think the thought there was, well, I can shoot, but I have to take a second to aim. So I think what they were trying to get across there was that without actually saying it, your character, takes aim, shoots, and then has to take aim and shoot again,
Right. Yeah.
if that makes
That
sense.
does. Yeah.
As opposed to the Mel Gibson lethal weapon snapping off a half dozen rounds and hitting accurately every time.
Well,
So, but no, like I said, that's just my alternate house rule for that stuff, and I don't know that anybody else does it any differently or that they've ever considered doing it that way. I'm sure there are people who have. I've seen some crazy stuff as it's been presented in the game. There was one guy who his rule for regeneration was to like multiply people who had regeneration's health so that it was some outrageously, high number.
right.
He's like, Deadpool has 400 health, and I'm like, how in the hell does Deadpool have 400 health? And if he has 400, like Wolverine's got to have like 650, right? Is that what we're trying to get at here? And that was sort of his explanation, and I'm like, dude, if that works for you, that's all I can say. I mean, you know, uh, and the other thing that Marvel has a big problem with upgrading power levels.
Yeah.
This game was obviously written in the 1980s and is 1980 centric.
Right.
Everything from the computers to the
Car phones.
design of it, yeah, to the character adaptions of it, and when you upgrade everybody, when Spitfire from the Invaders goes from being able to run 90 miles an hour to uh, now she's doing sonic, she's supersonic and she's, running at the speed of sound and stuff like that. I'm like, the heck did Spitfire become this fast? What happened this is even a possibility? So I don't know. You got to move with the time, but at the same time, you got to, as a GM, you got to deal with it.
I handle my multi attacks in game kind of like Star Wars does. For every multi action you want to do, you get -1 column shift as opposed,
Okay.
one -1 die. So I've had players like, well, I want to do this, and then do it one more time. So I'm like, all right, for every time, just like Star Wars, -1 column shift. And they're like, okay. And they kind of like that. So it's simple, it's easy enough, and I think it's balanced and fair enough that you're doing multiple actions regardless. So I mean, 2 column shifts down for 2 actions. I think that's fair. You're splitting your
Yeah.
brain and you're splitting your abilities and stuff. So why not?
Yeah. I would not be against that.
I mean,
I
every
mean
game.
that's and it's if I were playing in that situation, I definitely wouldn't be against it. Now I don't know if I would do it in a game myself. I would have to try it out and sort of see how it worked and see if it worked better than the way I'm doing it. And if it did, I would certainly wouldn't be against it.
I mean, the chart flows down and up based on the colors. I'm thinking, you're going to take multiple actions. It's obviously going to be harder to get that green and yellow if you're knocking it down 2 columns. Obviously, the coloring gets drastic when you go down 2 columns. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think in the actual terms of die rolls, I think maybe there's like a 10
20,
percentile difference between the two.
10, or sometimes 20, depending on what column shifts you're going down.
Yeah, yeah. So
I think it's a fair compromise. No one has complained. They've all been like, okay, yeah, cool, whatever.
yeah. So, but no, like I said, that's my presentation for all that.
So you've said
So
it all, is what you're saying.
I've said it all.
Well, I guess that's going to probably wrap up the show for this week. We've talked about a couple things such as Spider-Man and our multi-action rulings, and then we jumped into some what to do about characters who lost players who lost their characters. We kind of touched upon that. I know you wanted to go on further with that, but I'm not sure a whole show can be dedicated to that.
Probably not, but download the Moon Knight source book. There are a list of hotlines at the beginning of it. If you feel overwhelmed by the character loss, if you're deep in your feels, call one of those lines. Maybe they can help.
Oh, the prevention hotlines, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is call on our voice line. Call on the voice line now.
Yes, that voice line is 469-431-0277. The classic Faserip.
Stephen Watts, call now.
He's probably sitting there going, I'm not calling. Leave me alone.
Keith is nuts.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wait a second. There was a big announcement, and I thought this was hysterical. Did you read about the Wendy's role-playing game?
Yes.
Oh my God. Wendy's has released a role-playing game where you face off against McDonald's. Now, I don't know who in the hell would be running this, but this has got to be this is hysterical. I mean, Wendy's, the role-playing game.
I've already seen people make up dice and minis for it, so yeah.
Oh my God. I'm telling you, that's going to be like the next, that should, that'll be an adaptation.
It got so far up the chain that the famous Critical Role had done an episode on it, so.
Oh my God. Well, I'm glad that we talked about it then.
Yeah.
Stephen Watson posted about it in some group, and I said, with all the comments I make about Hot Pockets and Mountain Dew, you would think that, a Wendy's role-playing game was just around the corner anyway. So,
I think you need to start designing a Hot Pocket-based game now.
It's a possibility. I think that'll be an adaptation to the Wendy's game. We can do a source book.
Source book for there you go. All right, so we're gonna head out this week. Go to classicfacerip.com. Go to facebook.com/classicfacerip. Follow us on Twitter, Classic Facerip. That's really about it. 469 something.
Call now.
Try not to laugh every time you do that. You're like keep reminding me of that episode of Family Guy when the guy's like smoke when he was doing the subliminal messages.
And I don't watch Family Guy, so that's
It's funny. It was one of those corporations, and every time in the background the guy's like smoke. He's like, not now, Jerry, not now. But
I understand.
469-431-0277 is the hotline. Give us a call and tell us what you want to do, and give us suggestions, compliments, things like that. Head over to iTunes.
No
also.
death threats, please.
Yes, please don't do that. Head over to iTunes. Give us a rating review if you could, please. We'd appreciate it. If you can give us a written review, that'd be even better. I know iTunes is a pain to do, but Apple has changed it to Apple Podcasts now, and you should be able to easily get to the podcast section to give us a simple rating without having to get iTunes. So
that's it. Yeah.
So now we expect every one of you out there that listen, all three of you, as Keith has said. Does that include?
Call now.
Does that include Stephen Watson?
It might.
Probably. And Party Man Tom.
Yep.
Get out there, give us a rating, and we'll read it on the air. And I guess that's it. So we're going to say Excelsior as we head out of here.
Enough said.
Good night.